and welcome to this latest episode of the Driving That Profit with Zero Emissions podcast. I'm Barbara Albert, the co-CEO of 100% Renewables, a consultancy specializing in helping our clients to decarbonize. Today, I'm particularly excited to share our conversation with the CEO of BridgeClimb Sydney. Every time I take the train across the harbour bridge, I can't help but watch the climbers tackling the arches of this iconic structure. Having experienced the climb myself twice, I can truly say it's an exhilarating and unforgettable adventure that I highly recommend. I'm also incredibly proud to share that our company, 100% Renewables, was chosen to assist BridgeClimb on their journey to becoming carbon neutral certified. Joining me today is Deb Zimmer, CEO at BridgeClimb Sydney. Deb previously served as the Group CFO for Hammonds Holdings, which owns and manages tourism assets such as Scenic World and BridgeClimb. Her tenure has been marked by navigating the challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic with resilience and strategic acumen. Currently, she is spearheading efforts to revitalize this iconic business as international tourism continues its comeback. Prior to her pivotal role at BridgeClimb, Deb amassed over 2 decades of experience in financial and commercial management. Her leadership journey has taken her across diverse industries around the globe, including impactful roles at Virgin Active Australia, Vodafone Hutchison Australia, United Biscuits in London, and PricewaterhouseCoopers in Edinburgh. Additionally, Deb also sits on the City of Sydney Business Advisory Panel and the Board of Business Events Sydney. Hi, Deb, and welcome to the Driving That Profit with Zero Emissions show.
Thanks very much. Lovely to be here.
Deb, can you start by telling our listeners a bit more about BridgeClimb and its history and the unique experience to climb Sydney's iconic bridge?
I'd love to tell you about that. So BridgeClimb has been going for 25 years, and it's an experience that takes you to the top of Sydney Harbour Bridge, which is 134 metres above sea level. We've welcomed more than 4.5 million climbers over that time, coming from all over the world. We open 364 days a year. We are closed for 1 day as they set up the fireworks that I'm sure everyone has seen before. And we also operate the Pylon Museum, which is one of the brick pillars that looks like it holds up the bridge.
Yeah, it's always interesting. You keep driving over the bridge, taking the train over the bridge, and you see those pylons, and you think, "Gosh, they're the ones holding the bridge up." But of course, that's not the case because it's actually a hanging bridge, isn't it? Like suspended bridge, or what's the term for that?
Yeah, the engineering means that there's cables buried underneath the ground. So it is actually the single span bridge. The pylons were actually put in later as part of the project when it was about to be opened or close to being opened, because they felt it didn't look quite the way it should, not befitting of the amazing structure it is. So, but the pylons are useful, so they do house other things inside them, and we're lucky to have one of them to use as a museum.
For sure, and I've been there. I can highly recommend it to people visiting Sydney. So, can you tell us a bit more about people that are visiting BridgeClimb? Where do they come from? Why do they climb the bridge?
Yes, of course. So, most people recognise the Sydney Harbour Bridge. It's, an iconic landmark that has beautiful views over Sydney Harbour and over to the Opera House and then to the west as well. We operate in 2 different First Nations lands on the Gadigal side, which is the city side, and over to the Camaragal side on the north side. Before the pandemic, we would see about 70% of our guests being international, and they would predominantly be UK or US based, but we also have lots of people coming from Ireland, Germany, Canada, and all over the world. Since we've reopened after COVID, we are more local based, so we have 50% domestic and 50% international. And the reasons that people climb are so varied. It can be a bucket list item. They've seen it on, all the worldwide footage and they just want to do it. People climb it for their anniversary, for birthdays. We've had people get married up there. Some people just do it for a sense of achievement. And I probably shouldn't say this, but I am a little bit scared of heights. And I always feel a sense of achievement when I've done it. And I've done it countless times now.
It is, and it's such a great preparation as you're getting prepared for the bridge climb. The staff is really helpful in preparing you for the experience and making sure that you don't feel anxious. It's such a great experience, and I think a lot of celebrities have done the bridge climb too. Can you give us some examples of who's done it?
Yes, we've had many like Oprah, Prince Harry. We've actually had filming on the bridge up at BridgeClimb. We've just had at the weekend, all of the characters from Mad Max were up at BridgeClimb first thing on Sunday morning. So it's a very busy bridge celebrity wise, and we love hosting anybody, whether they're famous or not. We just want to make sure that everyone has a good time.
That's amazing that you've got visitors from all over the world coming to this bridge climb experience. Now, moving on to the topic of ESG and sustainability, as an organization, what are you most focused on in terms of ESG?
I think we focus across the board because it is important to us across the board. So if I look at firstly at governance, we are a family-owned business, and unlike some other family-owned businesses, we're lucky enough to have an independent board that really help drive that governance just through everything from risk mitigation to proper policies and procedures, investment decisions, and just making sure that we conduct ourselves safely. If I then move on to the social aspect, we focus internally, obviously, on our team. So we have create an environment which is supportive, inclusive, respectful, and that people enjoy coming to work. But then we look outwardly into that wider social network, and for us, that's important in that we work on Gadigal land here, as in First Nations Gadigal land. So we have a RAP, which is a reconciliation action plan, which helps support the reconciliation with our First Nations people. And to that point, we have a charity partnership with a company called Tribal Warriors, who provides support and opportunities for employment and to support families in the local community, which is really important. We also help to educate on First Nations history by having a Burwa climb, which is taken by a First Nations guide who will take you up and not only take you through the history, but show you what the landscape means from a First Nations perspective, which is absolutely wonderful. And then if I then go into sort of our sustainability angle in terms of the environment, we've got a comprehensive environmental management plan, which includes targets to help us guide us to reduce our overall environmental impact and ensure that our sustainability efforts are the best they can be. And that encompasses incorporating the emissions reductions targets. So included in the BridgeClimb's 2020 3, 4, 5 strategy, that we've got targets to be carbon neutral through emissions reductions, but also purchasing offsets. We focus on waste minimization across our sites. We are looking to move to green energy when our electricity contract comes up for renewal this year. We're upgrading to more energy efficient ways to manage thermal comfort. And then we also try and create a level of awareness amongst our team and our visitors to ensure that they know how to be part of a greener bridge climb.
It's such a lot of initiatives that you've got going there. I need to make sure to do that Burwa climb. That sounds interesting with the storytelling. Now, turning our attention to your carbon footprint. I mean, you see the bridge, you know that people climb the bridge. But what exactly does a carbon footprint of an organization like BridgeClimb look like? How can people envisage that? Like, what are the kind of emission sources that contribute to your organization's carbon footprint?
Yeah, it's a good question because obviously we're you walk yourself up there, so it's all human powered. So we're relatively light on emissions if you compare it to some other organizations. But our main usage comes from electricity that we use within the building, travel by our team that come into work, and also attending meetings and conferences and trade shows. Then we've got the sort of embedded emissions that come through our photos, our gift shop, our retail, or merchandise, and food and beverage. And then we launder and transport our climb suits offsite. So that also takes up a bit in terms of emissions.
And when it comes to your decarbonisation initiatives, and you've gone through so many of them, how do you communicate those to your visitors, and do they value your initiatives?
Um, I think that it's now, I mean, I attend lots of tourism events, conferences, mixed with lots of different tourism providers. And I think what we say is this is just becoming an increasingly important thing to all visitors, whatever they're doing. So the next generation of visitors are looking for that low emissions, accessible, sustainable tourism experience. And I think like a recent report said that 70% of travelers would make an effort to travel more sustainably in the coming year. And that's up from 10% in 2021. So it's a very rapidly evolving space. And we want to make sure that we are doing the right thing in that, and taking our part in the making this a sustainable tourism offering.
And shifting the focus to your internal operations, how do your people, your team, um, perceive all those initiatives? How motivated are they to participate in them, to suggest ideas, to implement them?
We've got some fantastic team members here who really not only are happy to participate, but happy to drive initiatives. So, and we want it to be easy for them to suggest ways of doing that and making some sustainable choices. So, we've directed some things that we think are a good idea. So we offer discounts on our cafe offerings, where you bring a keep cup. We've got filtered water taps so that we're not driving plastic bottle use. We've got reusable crockery and cutlery in all our kitchens. And we've got specific coffee recycling stations for anyone that doesn't have a keep cup with them. And for over a decade, BridgeClimb has been an active participant in Clean Up Australia. And that allows the team to take a break from their workday, head out into the local area and pick up the waste that we encounter along the way. So but we've also had some team-led initiatives where they come up with an idea that they think is useful. And like one of those examples would be team members that actually have beehives and will bring in their locally sourced honey, obviously, in reusable jars. And so it's that we encourage that momentum wherever we see it.
Must be so exciting to be working for an organization like yours. So, the big news that we've received a few weeks ago is that you have achieved carbon neutrality under the Climate Active program. Congratulations on this major achievement.
Thank you. We're very excited.
This is so good. So, why did you actually decide to pursue carbon neutrality? You mentioned previously it has been one of your targets in your environmental management plan, but how did you as an organization decide that carbon neutral was going to be your goal, or one of your goals?
I think like personally and from the team perspective, we believe it's important for every business and every individual to consider their role in contributing to environment and sustainability changes that are necessary. I think it was a natural step for BridgeClimb and our sister company Scenic World, especially when we're running outdoor tourism attractions. Like, we are very aware of the changes in the environment that make it more tricky to run an experience like this. And we just felt it was time to actually make a public declaration of things that we might have done in the background, and also just to get on board, to show that we are a leader in terms of in tourism. People do look to us. So to have that actually ticked off with the Climate Active certification was important to us.
And do you think, apart from the philosophy that supports that carbon neutrality actually has tangible, even financial benefits for you as an organization?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very evident that it's going to become harder and harder to operate an outdoor tourism attraction as the environment keeps evolving. And so I think that financially speaking, which is not really what this is about, but if we don't take care of the environment, then it's going to be harder and harder, and you're going to have less and less profitable days because of extreme weather, or things like that that will impact us going forward. So while it's not the wasn't the premise to start doing it, it's very evident when you run an outdoor tourism attraction that something needs to change.
Absolutely, because you're so rooted in the environment that you're situated in. I really like your philosophy on that. And I also like the fact that you have actually looked at decarbonisation initiatives such as, the purchase of green electricity or waste initiatives, etc. You're doing so much to reduce emissions in the first place. And then as a last resort, you are purchasing carbon offsets to then balance out the residual emissions to achieve carbon neutrality, which is great. So, with all the recent attention on greenwashing, has been so much of that, carbon offsets have been called in, some of them have been called into disrepute. The integrity of some carbon offset projects was questioned. How has this backdrop affected your decision to purchase carbon offsets? What carbon offset projects did you select? How did you navigate this really complicated territory?
Yes, thanks, Barbara. I mean, it's a great question, because I think really what we're trying to do is we're trying to do enough in the upfront space before we even get to the point of having to offset our carbon. So we will look for ways to do things. We've set up a waste reduction plan, which just encourages, we've got 13 different streams of different types of things that you can recycle. And we encourage team members to even bring them into work to have us recycle. So we're trying to take that as much out of the environment. We've also looked at our energy consumption and ways that we can change that, like making sure our air conditioning is working on not old technology, but the new technology, which is much more energy efficient, that we use blinds to stop the heat and make it much more thermally comfortable, as well as I said before, we were removing all of those single-use plastics in our cafe area as well as in our team areas. But I think once you get to that point and you've done these many things, I think the thing that we were really conscious of is, and try to educate ourselves in, it was how to buy these offsets properly so that you genuinely make a difference. Like, we're a company that works for a family with a high level of integrity, and it's actually really about reducing that source. And I thank you and Siggy's input to really help us understand what is a good offset versus what's not a good offset. So we bought our first round of them, and we're just about to buy our second round. I think the first time we just made a bit of a global decision as two CEOs in the business. This time we're looking to involve the team a bit more, where they can understand what we're buying and why we're buying it and why we've picked that. So it's an exciting time, and it's great to see that there's all these, such a variety of projects that you can pick from.
We've noticed that that kind of process and evolving thinking with other organizations as well, because there is so many hoops to jump through as part of going through climate active certification. You have to get your inventory of carbon emissions done. You have to get it audited by a third person. You have to fill in all the documentation, submit it to the climate active team, purchase the carbon offset. So there's so many steps to go through. And then sometimes towards the end, it can be a bit of a rush for organizations, and then the choice of what carbon offsets to choose. And we really need to submit, and oh my goodness. So oftentimes we find with many organizations that it's a top-driven decision from the top. But then the wish to include staff and to get broader stakeholder input as to what carbon offsets could be purchased is then the next logical step. Because initially, as an organization, when you go through carbon neutral certification, you don't know what's ahead of you, and in terms of picking the right carbon offset project. So it really helps having gone through that first year of submission to then know how to improve. And I love how you do that and how you integrate all those different opinions and make a decision together. On that topic, actually, did you encounter any challenges, or were you surprised by how this process works? Is there any recommendations you have for other organizations that go through the climate active carbon neutral process? Because it's quite complicated and lots of hoops to jump through. Any recommendations for how to tackle this as a business, or any challenges you've been able to overcome?
I think it's really important to bring this up to a level where you do have buy-in from senior people in the business, because it is going to impact them. Like the data sources that you have to pull together to work out your footprint is quite extensive. And so you really have to make sure that the people who are then trying to do it and pull it together have that buy-in from senior people, as well as have the time to be able to do it. I mean, I would say I was quite fortunate in this process in that I wasn't the person digging through all the data, but it does take a bit of time, and obviously it's important to get it right. So in our case, we had our finance team look over the process. They're used to gathering data and reporting numbers accurately. So that was fantastic, and it just made my life a lot easier to know that it was taken care of and governed well. So I will say a big thank you to Sam in our finance department, because she really shouldered the burden there, and she did it beautifully.
She's been absolutely incredible. Because that very first year when you start developing your carbon footprint and going through climate active certification is the biggest piece of work, because you have to, as you said, piece all the pieces of data together, know where to find them, manipulate them to be able to calculate the carbon footprint, make sure that all boxes are ticked, that it's all properly done so it can be verified, etc. It's a big major thing, and it must not be underestimated. So for organizations that are listening to this podcast, and if you're considering to do that, just don't underestimate how long it takes to get everything in place, to get all the data, to have it centralized, to establish the processes, to document all the assumptions and the estimations that go into it. It's quite a big undertaking, but so much simpler in the second, third year. So it's really just the first year that it's that much of an effort. So looking at everything that you've been doing as an organization in terms of ESG, your decarbonisation initiatives, your amazing news of having achieved carbon neutral status, what are your key takeaway messages for organizations that are listening to this podcast? What would you like to leave them with?
I mean, I think from your team, you've really helped educate us on how much of a crisis this is. Like it's called a crisis for a reason. And the sooner we can do things, the better. I think the education that I really felt I got through this process was that we are already at a point that is very difficult. So it's now, and we all have to get on board. And I think now I look at the world slightly differently when I travel myself. I look at what other people are doing, and where they're not doing it, it's a little bit disappointing. So it's really nice to be at this point where we have offset our footprint, but then to look at what else could we do to take it further forward, and how quickly can we do this to actually make a meaningful impact.
That's so very true. I'm thinking also of the levels of impact an organization can have in terms of decarbonization. So I'm thinking your innermost carbon footprint of your direct emissions, your electricity consumption, and then your wider value chain emissions of, for instance, stuff that you buy, your staff travel, etc. But then you take it outside even further, and then it comes to collaboration with your industry to achieve goals together, because certainly no one organization can attack this existential crisis that we're facing here by itself, and you need the collaboration with other businesses in the sector. And then even wider, like extending it out even further, it's then about advocacy and influencing other organizations, the government, industry associations, to also work on that problem. Would you agree with that?
Oh, 100%. I just see the collective power when we do things well together. Like as an industry, tourism naturally is about traveling. It's about going away from your home. And so that means that you have different choices put to you in terms of how you get there will have a carbon footprint. You get to your hotel. Are they using, single-use toiletries in the hotel room? Like, how is that hotel dealing with the waste that comes from hosting, large amounts of people during the day? And what I've found is everyone is quite, in our industry, has started to really focus on that and what part they can play. And we learn, we're a business that's takes people off a bridge, but we have a cafe and we launder things. So where we can connect with the hotels, we learn things. How are they doing things better? What things are they looking at? So I think as an industry, we learn well together, where we can share ideas and look for what we can do better, so that we're proud of our industry and are part of that industry.
Yeah, it's such a learning journey, and such a unique position to be in the tourism sector, where you get to get in touch with so many different people that you can then influence to be more sustainable, and to be in awe really of the environment that we have and should protect. So I love that you're working on that, Deb. It's amazing. So if people want to find out more, how can they connect with you?
We have our website is bridgeclimb.com. So you can drop in there, and we have ways that you can access media, like what we're doing with our ESG in terms of Bridge to Better. So yeah, just get in there and have an explore, and also just come and visit us. In the rocks in Sydney, and as you said, Barbara, you'll love the experience. You can see firsthand how we're recycling those coffee cups.
For sure, I can highly recommend it. All the listeners that are in Sydney or are going to be in Sydney, please do the bridge climb. It's such a great experience. I've done it myself twice already, even though I live in Sydney. It's amazing. You'll love it. Well, that was such a great journey you've taken us through, Deb, today, in terms of your ESG efforts, your decarbonization, all the considerations that went into your environmental targets, your ESG targets, your carbon neutrality. It has been absolutely enlightening and wonderful to have you on the podcast. Thank you so much for your time.
Oh, thank you very much for the invite, and thank you for all your guidance through this process. It's been absolutely wonderful. I've learned a lot, and I would encourage everyone to do it. It's just it's doing the right thing, and it's worth it in the end.
That was Deb Zimmer, CEO at BridgeClimb Sydney, talking about their sustainability journey and carbon neutrality. If you know another person who you think will enjoy this podcast, please let them know, so that more people can hear about best practice stories of how organizations are moving to net zero emissions. Remember, to reach net zero emissions, aim high, always be curious, and act now. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next episode.